Single dad refused the CEO's $1 million offer. Her reason why left him in tears. He doesn't belong here, Scott Hartley announced. Loud enough for every person in the community center to hear. Someone like him doesn't get to make decisions like this. The Riverside Community Arts Center smelled like acrylic paint and old wood on Tuesday evenings. 40 parents, teachers, and neighbors sat in plastic chairs arranged in a circle, watching the man in the $1,000 suit point at the man in the custodian's uniform. Scott Hartley, VP of Acquisitions at Chen Development, had the posture of someone who had never been told no. Marcus Hayes stood near the back wall, still in the gray coveralls he'd worn all day, paint flecks on his knuckles. His daughter Chloe's crayon drawing folded in his breast pocket, while Scott's associate Derek Walsh leaned against the stage and smirked. 3 board members checked their phones. A woman near the front covered her mouth. "This is a business decision," Scott continued, his voice smooth and calculated, the kind that had probably convinced a lot of rooms of a lot of things. "We're talking about $1 million offer. $1 million. And he's refusing it?" He looked around the circle, performing his disbelief. "Let me be clear. Chen Development is trying to help this community. If some janitor wants to make that harder, maybe someone else should be speaking for this building." What Scott didn't know was that the janitor he was dismissing had designed 3 award-winning buildings before the age of 30. What Derek didn't know was that by morning, Scott would be cleaning out his own office, handed a termination letter by the very CEO whose name he'd been throwing around all evening. And what neither of them knew, what no one in that room knew yet, was why Diana Chen had really made that offer in the first place. 6 days earlier, Marcus Hayes had woken up at 5:45 a.m. with $200 in his checking account and no idea his life was about to break open. The alarm didn't startle him anymore. He'd set it that way, soft, patient, the kind of sound that let him surface gradually. Chloe was still sleeping in the next room. He could hear her breathing through the thin wall. He made coffee first. Then her lunch. The sandwich came together with a focus that used to belong to Blueprints: turkey, no mustard. Crusts removed because she'd asked him nicely 3 times and he always gave in on the 3rd. He folded the note and slipped it beside the apple. Same note every day, slightly different words. "You are the best part of my day, Dad." The bills on the counter were all current, barely. He'd made that a rule after Emma died. One crisis at a time. He wasn't going to let Chloe see envelopes pile up and start worrying about things an 8-year-old shouldn't carry. Her drawings covered the refrigerator. 12 of them at least. Chloe went to art class at the Riverside Community Center every Saturday morning. She'd been going since she was 4. Emma had taken her first, back when Emma was still the one driving. Still the one who could. The center had been Emma's favorite thing about this neighborhood. She'd helped raise money for the kiln. She'd hand-lettered the sign above the front door herself in that slanted cursive of hers that leaned slightly left, like she was always moving toward something. That sign was still there. Marcus walked past it every Saturday morning, and every Saturday morning it did the same thing to his chest. He hadn't always been a custodian. There was a version of his life where he'd still be doing the work he'd trained for: 12 years of architecture school and early career, 2 firms, a series of residential builds that earned him a regional award at 29. Then Emma's diagnosis, and then the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Slow down, be present, make Chloe feel like the ground was still solid. He didn't regret it. He'd make the same choice every time. But he didn't talk about it. His co-workers at the school didn't know. The parents at the center didn't know. He just showed up, did the work, and went home. Chloe appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, rabbit tucked under her arm. The rabbit had been Emma's idea. It still smelled faintly of the lavender hand cream Emma used. "Dad, is the meeting tonight?" He turned from the counter. "Yeah, bug, after your art class." She looked at him with the specific attention children have when they sense something important is happening, but haven't been told what. "Is the art center going to close?" "Not if I have anything to say about it." She considered this. Then she nodded, slow and certain. "Then it won't close." He wanted to match her confidence. He was working on it. 2 weeks ago, the letter had arrived. Chen Development. A formal offer to purchase the building at market value plus 20%, which translated from legal language meant a lot of money, more than the art center had ever seen. He'd called the board, called the building's co-founders, called a lawyer friend who owed him a favor. And then he'd called his mother, who'd known Emma, who'd understood immediately when he said, "I don't think we can take it." Why not? Because Emma built that place, and Chloe knows it. If we sell, she loses the last thing her mother made. His mother had gone quiet. Then you don't sell. That night he'd RSVP'd for the meeting. He planned to tell them no, in person with the community watching. He hadn't anticipated Scott Hartley. Hartley walked in at exactly 7:03 p.m. Derek Walsh flanked him, carrying a briefcase with the energy of someone hired to look important. Hartley scanned the 40 community members, adjusted his expression into something approximating warmth, and extended his hand to Marcus without slowing. "We're glad you took the time," Hartley said. "Thanks for coming in person," Marcus said. "Of course. We want this to be a conversation." Derek distributed one-page documents. "Once people see the numbers, a lot of concerns will." "The concern isn't the number," Marcus said. Hartley paused. "I'm sorry?" "What happens to the building after the sale? That's the community's concern. We'd be happy to discuss future use. What's the plan for the building?" A pause. Cooler this time. "That's proprietary to the development process." Marcus nodded once. "Then we have a problem." After the meeting, Rebecca Torres approached him. She'd been running Saturday art classes at the center for 6 years. Her watercolors hung in the front hallway. She was the person who'd taught Chloe to hold a brush at 4 years old. "You were right to push back," she said low. "They've bought 3 community buildings in the past 2 years. All of them mixed use. All of them condos now." Marcus watched Hartley work the room. "I know," he said. "I've done the research." 3 days later, Hartley called the board directly, bypassing Marcus. Greta, the board chair, 70 years old and practically a fixture of the building herself, called to relay the update. The offer had climbed another 15%, plus a $50,000 community arts fund if the sale closed within 30 days. "Marcus," Greta said, carefully, "that's a lot of money. That fund disappears if we don't sell. That's not generosity. That's leverage. The building needs a new HVAC. The roof has 3 years before it needs replacing. We don't have those funds." "I know." He was quiet a moment. "Can you give me 2 weeks to find another option?" She gave him one. That night, after Chloe was asleep, Marcus pulled out the architectural drawings he'd done 6 years ago. The center's renovation plans, which he'd never mentioned to anyone. He'd done them for free after Emma asked. And he'd signed with a pseudonym because he didn't want anyone making it a thing. He turned them over in his hands for a long time. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Hayes, this is Diana Chen. I'd like to speak with you privately. I think there's been a misunderstanding about our offer." He stared at the screen. Then typed back, "I'm listening." They scheduled a meeting for the following Tuesday. Marcus arrived early. Rebecca was there. She'd been attending everything now, quietly documenting it all for the community newsletter she was putting together. 3 parents had come too. Hartley arrived with Derek. Diana Chen did not appear. Miss Chen had a conflict, Hartley said. She sends her regards. Something in the room shifted. Marcus had been expecting to finally speak with the person in charge. Instead, the VP who'd told him a week ago he didn't belong. Hartley presented slides. Projections, renderings. The new mixed-use development would include a community space on the ground floor. How large? Marcus asked. 1,200 square feet. The current art center is 6,000. Progress requires compromise. That's a 4,800 square foot loss of community space. Hartley's slide clicked forward, cutting off Marcus's view of the square footage data. As I was saying, you moved the slide before I finished reading it. The room shifted. Parents exchanged glances. Hartley's smile went thin. Some people, he said slowly, deliberately, find it difficult to accept help when it's offered. That's a them problem, not an us problem. He looked around the room, performing patience. This offer is more than fair. If certain individuals want to make this harder than it needs to be, that says something about their priorities. He looked directly at Marcus. And frankly, their judgment. 3 people near the back turned to see how Marcus would respond. Marcus said nothing. Just looked back at Hartley with the quiet of someone who has decided to stop engaging and start documenting. After the meeting, Chloe was in the car waiting, doing her homework. She looked up when he got in. How'd it go? Still working on it. She watched him start the car. That man who keeps coming to the meetings, he looks at you like you're in his way. Probably because I am. She thought about that. Good, she said, and went back to her homework. The legal letter arrived Thursday. Official Chen Development letterhead. Attached was a notice claiming the board's non-response constituted bad faith negotiation under a clause Marcus was almost certain didn't exist. The letter was signed by their legal team. Derek Walsh's name appeared at the bottom. Rebecca called 2 minutes after he received it. They sent it to Greta too, she said. She's scared. It's a pressure tactic. Marcus, I don't think Greta can hold out. If she votes yes, she won't vote without the full board present. He was already on his laptop. There's no such clause. You sure? I'm an architect, not a lawyer. A pause. But I can read a contract. That night was the lowest point. Greta called at 9. 3 board members had indicated they would vote yes. The 30-day window closed in 6 days. Marcus sat in the kitchen after Chloe was asleep and stared at an old donation envelope he'd found in Emma's things, her handwriting on the back that left leaning cursive, for the kids who need somewhere to be. That was all she'd written, simple as a grocery list, meaning everything. He thought about what it would look like to explain to Chloe, on some future Saturday, why they were driving past a condo building where the art center used to be. He picked up his phone, typed to Diana Chen's number, I need to meet with you directly. Without Scott Hartley, tomorrow if possible. The response came 4 minutes later. I'll be there at noon. Diana Chen arrived alone. She was smaller than Marcus had expected from a woman whose name appeared on the sides of buildings. Early 60s. Gray hair worn simply. No entourage. No assistant. No briefcase. She shook Marcus's hand in the center's main room, which was empty on Wednesday afternoons, except for the art still pinned to the walls from the previous Saturday's class. Chloe's painting was in the center of the row above the window. A red bird slightly too round, wings spread. Emma would have loved it. Thank you for meeting me, Diana said. Where's Scott Hartley? She settled into a chair, unhurried. Scott is no longer handling this transaction. A pause, considered, or any of our transactions. She let that land. I owe you an apology for how this has been managed. That's not how I do business. Marcus sat across from her. Rebecca stayed near the door. I'm still not selling, Marcus said. I know. She looked around the room. The children's work on the walls, the kiln in the corner. I'm not here to change your mind. Then why are you here? Diana opened her bag, set a folder on the table between them. Inside, photographs. Old ones, printed on plain paper from a phone. Marcus leaned forward. The photos were of this room, this same art center. 7 years ago, the walls were different. The kiln wasn't there yet. The window had a different curtain. And in the center of the frame, a woman he would know, anywhere, in any room, in any version of his life. Emma, his wife, standing next to a teenage girl he didn't recognize. Both of them laughing at something just outside the frame. His voice came out different than he intended. Where did you get these? Diana's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. That's my daughter, she said quietly. With your wife. Her daughter's name had been May. 17 when the cancer was diagnosed, a rare form, fast-moving, the kind that doesn't negotiate. The summer before May died, someone had arranged for her to attend art classes at the Riverside Community Center. It might have been the hospital social worker, might have been a neighbor. Nobody remembered anymore. What mattered was that May had come. And Emma had been there on a Saturday morning, the way she always was. And Emma had sat down next to May at the long wooden table without making anything out of it. And they had started to paint. They spent 6 Saturdays together, Diana said. Her voice was even. The voice of someone who has practiced being even about this. May had stopped talking to people, not because she wanted to, but because the fear shut everything down. She couldn't access words anymore. But Emma, she paused. Emma never tried to fix that. She just painted. And let May paint beside her. And somewhere in those 6 Saturdays, May started talking again. Marcus's hands had gone still on the table. The week before she died, May made me promise something, Diana continued. She said, Mom, that art center, don't let it disappear. The kids who need it won't know they need it until they're already in it. She said it the way she said things at the end, like she could see farther ahead than I could. A pause. May was like that. Rebecca made a sound near the door, something small and involuntary. Marcus didn't move. He was looking at the photograph of Emma. Emma laughing. Emma in this room 7 years ago, being exactly who she had always been without once mentioning it to anyone. The offer wasn't a purchase, Diana said. It was a trust endowment. I was going to buy the building to protect it, deed it back to the community foundation, and fund its operating costs for 50 years. No development. No condos. Her voice, still careful. Still quiet. I wanted to do it because of what May asked me. And because the woman who was kind to my daughter when I couldn't be there with her built this place. And I didn't want to let it fall apart. Marcus looked up from the photograph. She never told me, he said. His voice broke on the last word. Diana looked at him for a moment before she answered. She wouldn't have, she said. That's who she was. The room was silent for a long time. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere in the back of the building, a pipe clicked. Finally, Marcus said, I thought you were here to take it. I know. I should have come myself from the beginning. She folded her hands. Scott is very good at closing deals. He's less good at understanding why some things aren't deals. Why didn't you just explain? Because I didn't want it to feel like leverage, like I was using May's story to get something. Her voice, for the first time, had something rougher in it. But not explaining created its own damage. Marcus was quiet. He looked at Chloe's red bird above the window, wings out, a little too round. Emma would have loved it. How old was May when they met? He asked. 17. Chloe was almost 4 that summer. Diana looked at the children's work, nodded, slowly. Then May would have loved meeting her. Marcus stood, walked to the window and stood there with his back to Diana, working through what he now knew and what it meant and what it changed about the past 7 years. Then, tell me more about the trust structure. The consequences, he understood, were only beginning. By the following morning, Scott Hartley had resigned. That was the word that came from Greta, who'd heard it from the event coordinator, who served on 3 of the same boards as Chen Development's operations director. The official reason, as eventually documented and quietly circulated, was conduct unbecoming of a company representative, specifically the fabrication of contractual language to pressure a non-profit organization into a sale. Marcus heard about it over the phone while he was making Chloe's lunch. Apparently Miss Chen found out about the fake clause, Greta said. And? She was not pleased. Marcus thought about Scott Hartley, his tailored suit, the theatrical sweep of the room before he spoke. The word janitor delivered with such careful contempt. He felt nothing resembling satisfaction, just something quieter, the sense that actions eventually find their correct endings, whether anyone is watching or not. Is the board meeting still Friday? He asked. It is, Greta said. I think we have good news. Derek Walsh was gone by the following week. No formal announcement. He simply stopped showing up, his name removed from the letter that had frightened the board, which was now the subject of a written apology from Chen Development's legal department. His clients were redistributed. The office absorbed the silence he left behind. Some exits are loud. Derek's was quiet, which was, Marcus thought, probably appropriate for someone who'd spent a month standing in other people's shadows, mostly adding to the weight they cast. 6 weeks later, Saturday morning, Marcus arrived at the Riverside Community Arts Center 40, 5 minutes before class, the way he always did, to open the windows, set out the supply trays, make sure the kiln was at temperature. The sign above the door was the same. Emma's hand lettering faded, but legible. Still leaning left. Still moving toward something. Below it, a new brass plate had been installed Tuesday. The May Chen and Emma Hayes Art Center. He touched it once. Went inside. Chloe arrived with Rebecca, who had started giving her a ride on Saturdays when Marcus mentioned the timing was tight. They came in mid-laugh, something Chloe had said in the car that Rebecca couldn't stop repeating. Chloe's supplies were in the new bag Diana had sent. Proper brushes, professional-grade watercolors, packed carefully, with a note tucked into the front pocket. For a young artist from someone who believes in this place. Chloe had read that note 3 times the night it arrived. Then she'd put it on the refrigerator, between 2 of her drawings. Marcus watched her set up at the long wooden table, taking out each brush in the deliberate, careful order Emma had taught her, from widest to narrowest, lined up like she was preparing for something important. She was. After class, Rebecca stayed to help clean up the way she'd been doing for a few weeks. They'd fallen into a rhythm. She washed brushes. He folded the supply cloths. They talked over the sounds of Chloe finishing something in the corner. Diana's coming for the dedication ceremony, Rebecca said. I know, she called. Marcus dried his hands on the cloth. She's bringing photos of May. Rebecca looked at him. How do you feel about that? He thought about it, honestly, without hurrying. Like it's right, he said. Like it was always going to end up here, somehow, she nodded. She'd learned when to let things breathe. So had he. Chloe carried her finished painting over at noon, holding it with both hands, face out, careful not to smudge. A woman standing in a garden. Watercolor, simple and true. The way children paint when they're not afraid of being wrong. Above the woman, in Chloe's careful letters, for Mom and for May. Neither Marcus nor Rebecca asked her how she knew about May. She'd been listening, the way children do, to the conversations adults believe they're having privately. Marcus took the painting and held it for a long time. "Can we hang it?" Chloe asked. He looked at the wall, at all the art that lived here, made by small hands in this room, week after week, year after year, because a woman had once decided this was worth building. Right in the center, he said. And that was where it went.